I never asked for much. Just the quiet hum of the forest outside my cabin, the soft sizzle of something frying on my old stove, and the silence that comes after a long life of running from people who never understood me. Then the sky cracked. Open, not like thunder. No storm ever made the stars blink out. This was different, louder, stranger, like the universe inhaled too fast and choked on its own secrets. I ran outside barefoot, boots still drying from the last rain, and looked up into a blackness that wasn't just night. It was wrong, and then she fell. A screamless descent, glowing not with fire but with some kind of pale pulse, silver light chasing her down like guilt. She hit the earth 2 ridges from my porch. The ground thudded like a buried heart awakening. Everything in me said to stay back. I grabbed my flashlight anyway. I found her half buried in a tangle of brush and smoke. Her body enormous, inhuman not in the way monsters are, but in how statues seem too large to be real. Not grotesque, no, just engineered differently. Sculpted, solid, built for something I didn't yet understand. She was bleeding green and unconscious. Her skin shimmered faintly, like oil on water. She had no clothes, just a lattice of ruined metal woven over parts of her body. Fragments of some exoshell, probably. Her arms were massive, but her fingers trembled like reeds in wind. Her legs twitched, as if still running from wherever she'd escaped. I knelt beside her and whispered the first thing that came to mind. "You're safe now, I promise." A lie, because I didn't know that. But I wanted it to be true. She didn't wake until the next morning. I'd hauled her, somehow, to the cabin, layered thick blankets over her, and cranked the fire high. I expected her to panic, lash out, break me in half with those powerful limbs, but when her eyes opened, glowing softly beneath lids weighted by exhaustion, she only said one word. Termination? It wasn't a question. It was resignation. She thought I'd finished the job. "No," I said. "You fell. I found you. You're safe." She blinked. Once. Twice. Her pupils adjusted in spirals, rotating like camera lenses. "Are you male?" she asked. Her voice carried tones I couldn't place, like it wasn't just sound but vibration. "Yes," I answered slowly. "Then I must leave." She tried to sit up. Couldn't. Collapsed again, groaning. "What's your name?" I asked, moving to her side. She hesitated. "Aevira," she said finally, her voice cracking on the last syllable like it had never been spoken gently before. Over the next few days, I pieced things together. She came from beyond orbit, born, not in the way we are, but designed in a facility she wouldn't name. She used phrases like biogenetic mesh calibration and progenitor capacity limits. I didn't understand half of it. But the meaning was clear. She had been created to bear life. But something went wrong. "Too large," she said quietly one evening. "My frame rejected the embryos. All 3 trials failed. They deemed me inefficient, obsolete." Her gaze drifted to the fireplace, her jaw clenched against pain no physical injury could explain. "They cast me out," she whispered. "I was too much, and not enough." My chest tightened. I didn't know what to say. So I just kept making her tea. Nights passed. She healed quickly, faster than any human could. The green blood darkened into scars, then faded. She moved with grace again, controlled yet unsure. I offered her my guest cot, but she refused. "Hard floor is familiar," she said. "Softness confuses the mind." We spent hours talking, or more accurately, her watching me talk. She asked questions like a child might. Why do birds sing when they know winter will kill them? Why does fire flicker even when it has enough? Fuel? Why do humans lie? I didn't always have answers, but she listened anyway. One night she stood in the doorway, silhouetted against moonlight. "Why didn't you give me to your authorities?" she asked. "Because they'd dissect you," I replied. "But I am broken. I cannot do what I was made for." I stood from my chair, took a step toward her, and said something I hadn't planned. "Maybe you weren't made wrong. Maybe you were made for something else." Aevira didn't respond. But the next morning she'd made breakfast, burnt eggs, boiled coffee. But it was something. It was when she found the baby shoes that everything changed. I kept them on a shelf. Dusty, untouched. My daughter had died a long time ago, long before peace found me in these woods. Aevira held them like they were sacred. Her fingers trembled again, but not from weakness. "Did she die because she was unfit?" she asked. "No," I said. "She died because the world is cruel." A long pause. "Do you still want a child?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know." She looked at me. Not with pity, not with romance, but with something deeper, an offering. "I cannot promise a child," she said, "but I can promise I will try to become more than they said I was." And in that moment, I realized she wasn't asking for permission to stay. She was asking for a future. Aevira didn't move in like someone seeking shelter. She moved in like someone testing gravity. Each step she took across my cabin floor seemed to question whether she belonged here, or anywhere. She studied my shelves like they were archives. My worn flannel shirts, my oil lamps, the cracked ceramic cup I refused to throw away, all of it fascinated her. Like the mundane details of my life were relics of a species she hadn't been taught to value. And I watched her, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. I'd never lived with someone who treated silence like a language. One morning, I woke up to a low hum in the air. A frequency, faint but sharp. It wasn't mechanical. It was coming from her. Aevira was kneeling outside, hands planted in the soil, eyes closed. Her body trembled as if channeling power through the earth. I stepped closer, barefoot on the damp wooden deck, and she opened her eyes just as I approached. "You shouldn't come near," she said gently. "Why?" "You're glowing." "Calibration. I do not want you altered." I froze. "Altered how?" "My systems are waking. When we were engineered, our creators embedded nanoconduits in our bodies. Sleeping circuits, they called them. They remain dormant unless..." She hesitated. "Unless emotional pathways activate them." It took me a second. "You mean feelings woke them up?" She nodded barely. "Connection, care. These are not things I was allowed." That hit harder than I expected. "So what happens now?" "I don't know. I was never given this far in the protocol. I wasn't meant to evolve." She started changing in small ways. Her skin, once a glimmering slate of shifting hues, began to stabilize. Softer, less alien. Her shoulders, once too broad for doorways, seemed to narrow slightly, like her body was adapting. I didn't ask questions. She didn't offer explanations. But one evening, as we sat by the fire sharing the kind of silence I'd grown to enjoy, she asked me something. Unexpected. "Willy, do you believe in ghosts?" I thought for a moment. "Not the bedsheet kind, but I believe people carry things that haunt them." She nodded. "I carry 12, inside me." "What do you mean?" 12 cores, 12 potential embryos. I was fitted with a prototype womb made of living mesh. Each core is encoded with different genetic sequences. None reached viability. They're still inside. Dormant. Silent. Like ghosts waiting for a door that never opens. I didn't breathe for a moment. "They left them inside you?" "They didn't see the point in removing them. They considered me a failed project, not worth the extraction resources. That rage I thought I'd buried years ago. Rage at systems. At injustice, at the coldness of people who build life without respecting it. It came roaring back. I'm so damn sorry, I whispered. She didn't cry. I wasn't sure she could, but she leaned slightly closer. That was enough. We spent the next week working on the greenhouse together. It was old, overgrown with moss and regret. I hadn't touched it since before I lost my daughter, but with Aevira's help, it became a symbol again. She cleared debris with precision, mended broken glass using some kind of fused material from her body. Liquid crystal, she called it. We planted tomatoes, peppers, and something she brought out from her inner circuitry. A seed unlike any I'd ever seen. It's not from Earth, she explained, but it craves soil just like yours. One night I found her sitting alone in the greenhouse, bathed in moonlight. She was humming, a soft, vibrating tone, not melodic, but deeply alive. "What are you singing?" I asked. "It's not a song," she replied. "It's a frequency. For comfort. My kind hum to the unborn. I used to do it, even when I knew none would answer." "Can I sit?" I asked. She nodded. The moonlight made her features look less engineered, more human. Or maybe I was just seeing her more clearly. "I don't know what we're building," I said, "but it feels real." "It is real," she replied, "because no one told me to do it. I chose this." We stayed there for hours. No touching, no declarations. Just quiet trust growing like the seeds beneath us. But nothing good stays hidden forever, did. Started with the blinking light on my radio, something I hadn't used in years. Someone was scanning frequencies, government maybe. Or worse, corporate recovery teams, the kind that didn't ask for permission to take what they once created. I checked the transmission logs. The pings were coming closer, a few miles out. Someone's looking, I told Aevira. She closed her eyes. "For me?" "We'll run," I said instinctively. "No." She opened her hand, revealing a shard of tech embedded in her palm. "They'll track this. I'll disable it." "Won't that hurt you?" "Yes. But I've hurt in worse ways." And just like that, she dug it out with one of my kitchen knives, calmly, with zero flinch. Her body glowed blue around the wound as it closed, sealing itself like living armor. "They won't find me now," she whispered, but the fear in her eyes said otherwise. The next day, I found her building something near the edge of the forest, a circle, wide and shallow, lined with stones and metal she'd salvaged from her shipwreck. "What is this?" I asked. "A cradle," she said. "For a baby?" "For possibility," she gestured to her stomach. "I feel something. I don't know if it's real, but I need to believe. And if there's even a chance, I want the first thing it senses to be love, not rejection." And just like that, I realized what she was doing. She wasn't just surviving. She was preparing to become a mother. The cradle sat like a promise at the edge of the trees, stones warmed by the sun, rings of salvaged alloy woven through it like a nest made from ruin. Aevira knelt beside it every morning, not praying, not speaking, just listening. "What are you listening for?" I asked one morning as dew clung to her skin like stars. "A spark," she replied. "A signal. Life begins with sound before shape. And if there's anything forming inside me, it will speak first in silence." It wasn't the answer I expected, but that was the thing about her. Every day she undid what I thought I knew. The changes started small. She began to breathe differently, deeper, with rhythm. Her skin, once always shifting tones, settled into something warm, familiar. Not fully human, but less like machinery. Her body structure remained large, yes, but softer now. Where there had been tension in her joints, there was now flow, as though nature was reshaping what science had rejected, and then she began to eat. Before, She'd only accepted tea and minerals. Now she devoured eggs, bread, even the spicy bean soup I thought no one could tolerate but me. Her body accepted it all, hungrily, gratefully. Fuel for creation, she said once. If something's growing, I must feed it. One night, I woke to the sound of her voice. Not outside, inside the cabin. She was in the kitchen singing again, not the frequency hum, but something melodic. I stepped out quietly. She stood with her back to me, swaying, her hands gently cradling her abdomen, which had begun to swell. Not unnaturally, not rapidly, but enough that I noticed the curve days ago. I said nothing, because sometimes wonder demands silence. After a while, she turned to me. "Do you think it's real?" I walked over, placed my hand on hers, on the warmth of her stomach. "I don't know," I said, "but I believe in it." She leaned into me then, for the first time, not as a gesture of dependence, but of trust. And in that moment, something between us changed. We weren't just coexisting anymore, we were building something. Together, we spent our days preparing. I reinforced the cabin, reinforced the greenhouse, wired up basic solar panels that had been lying useless in the shed. Aevira upgraded the wiring with metals I couldn't name, sealed the windows with some kind of memory fabric that adapted to temperature shifts. It was like we were preparing for siege and birth all at once, because we both knew they were still coming. Whoever made her, they wouldn't stay silent forever. We ran into trouble first in the forest. A drone, sleek, obsidian, silent, hovering between the trees, scanning. Aevira spotted it before I did. She crouched low, her breath vanishing into a whisper, her pulse sinking with the earth. She didn't run, she rose. "Stay here," she said. "No way." But she was already moving, faster than I'd ever seen her. Not with brute force, but elegance, like she'd trained for this. Within seconds, she had leapt into the trees and landed on the drone, disabling it with a shock from her palm. It fell to the forest floor, sizzling. She dragged it back. "This was not standard issue," she muttered. "This is from the faction. They weren't supposed to know." "Know what?" "That I survived." Her eyes narrowed. "That I might still be capable of life." Later that night, as we studied the drone's insides, she told me everything. There was a war, far above Earth, between factions who believed in preserving engineered life and those who believed in purging what didn't perform. Aevira's creators had been part of the latter. She was their cautionary tale, a warning etched in skin and metal. "They believed capacity was purpose," she said bitterly. "I failed at function, so I was erased." "But you weren't," I reminded. "Her? No, and now I'm dangerous." She leaned over the broken drone, peeled a layer of black film from its processor, and held it up. "This means they'll come in person next, and they won't ask for permission." My stomach tightened. "Then we make a plan." She looked at me. "You still want to help me? Even now?" "You're not just you anymore," I said, gently touching her belly. "You're both of you, and I'd die before I let them take either." Aevira said nothing, but she took my hand and squeezed it, once, firmly, like sealing a vow. We had less than a week. They came at dawn, not with guns or ships, but with a voice. A low hum filled the valley. Every animal fell silent. Birds fled, trees seemed to lean away. Then the ship descended, smooth, gray, curved like a falling tear. A voice echoed from inside it. "Return to protocol, return the vessel." Aevira stood at the edge of the garden, hair catching the breeze like fire. Her stomach was larger now. She held no weapon. "I am not yours," she called back. "You are malfunctioning. You are unfit for continuation." "Then I am perfect," she said, voice steady. "Because I chose this life." The ship opened. 2 figures stepped out, tall, sleek, faces covered in mirrored shields. They moved like phantoms, quiet and certain. I stepped forward with the shotgun I hadn't touched in years. "Back off," I warned. They ignored me. One reached for her. Aevira stepped between us, palm raised, and emitted the same frequency she once hummed to the soil. It shattered the silence. The trees shook, the earth groaned, the agents froze, twitching, confused, like the sound corrupted their connection. "They didn't calibrate for evolution," she muttered. She stepped forward again, pulsing with that same hum, until the agents fell to their knees. And then she stopped. Because her water broke, Aevira turned to me, breath ragged, face glowing with panic and awe. "It's time." I carried her, ran through the trees, through wind and fear and wonder, to the cradle we had built together. She screamed once, then again. Not in agony, but in resistance, against every system that had told her she was broken. And then, in the stillness between stars, a cry. Not hers. Not mine. A third voice. New. Small. Furious. Alive. Aevira collapsed into me, cradling the child. Tiny, silver-eyed, wrapped in the torn fabric of her old armor. "She's real," she whispered. "She's perfect," I said. "No," Aevira whispered. "She's ours." I held the child, our child, in trembling arms while Aevira collapsed into the moss beside the cradle. Her chest rose in slow, labored breaths, not from pain, from awe, from the weight of something no one, no thing, believed was possible. The infant stared up at me with silver-flecked eyes that reflected firelight and starlight both. Her skin was a soft blend of bronze and lavender, and her fingers twitched in patterns almost coded. She was quiet, already calm. I didn't believe it until I heard her cry, I said. Aevira smiled faintly, lips cracked but proud. Neither did I. We spent the first hours in stunned silence, watching over the baby as the forest shimmered around us like it was watching too. I used my coat to shield the newborn from the cold. Aevira reached out with a shaking hand and placed 2 fingers on her daughter's forehead. "I don't know what she is," she whispered, "but I know what she means." She was not a mistake, not a glitch, not a failed outcome. She was defiance incarnate. We named her Mirell. Aevira said the name had once belonged to a star that burned out before it was cataloged by her creators. Forgotten, overlooked, but no less brilliant for it. She will be remembered, Aevira said. I didn't know how to care for a baby that might be half alien, half synthetic, half something else entirely. But she drank from the bottle like any other infant. She slept wrapped against Aevira's chest and clutched my fingers in her dreams. She lived, and that was enough, for now. But peace never lasts when something this impossible has been born. On the second night, we saw the sky ripple. Not a ship this time, something worse. A field, a net of pulses forming overhead. A recall grid. Aevira stood outside the cabin, Mirell in her arms, eyes fixed on the strange lattice of electric sky above us. They're not coming to negotiate anymore, she said. They're coming to reset me, or destroy me. They're not touching you, I said. I don't fear for myself, she said softly. I fear what they'll do to her. We prepared. Aevira entered what she called deep sync. She sat for hours with her hands in the soil, drawing from the earth's core, from unseen conduits she claimed her body could still connect to. Her skin grew brighter. Her veins lit up. I wasn't just built to carry life, she told me. I was built to defend it. And me? I rigged the perimeter with every scrap of wire and steel I had. I built snares, pits, alarms, even though I knew none of that would stop what was coming. Still, I had to try, because I wasn't just defending a home anymore. I was defending a family. On the 4th night, they came. They didn't speak. No announcements. No threats, just 7 figures, gliding silently from the forest, each one taller than the last, wrapped in armor that shimmered like oil and ice. Their eyes glowed blue. Their mouths never moved. They wanted to erase her. I stepped forward with the last gun I had. It wouldn't matter. But Aevira was faster. She placed Mirell in my arms, whispered, "Run if I fall," and walked toward them. Not like a soldier, like a mother. She spoke in a language I couldn't understand. Vowels that bent the air, consonants that cracked like static. The figures paused, then one stepped forward. He raised his arm. She struck first, not with her fists, with sound. That hum she used to sing to seeds and soil, it returned, magnified 1,000-fold. The trees bent toward it. The earth split in rings. The grid above shimmered, then fractured. The first agent collapsed, his armor cracking in jagged veins of light. The others rushed, and Aevira met them head-on. I watched in horror and awe. She wasn't fighting like a machine. She was feeling. She was fury, grace, protection. She moved like the earth itself rose to defend her. But they were many, and she, though mighty, was only one. I placed Mirell in the greenhouse, sealed it tight, and grabbed the gun I'd buried for years. When I joined the fight, one of the agents lunged at me. Aevira screamed. The blast from my rifle sent the thing stumbling, but it didn't fall. It turned, glowing from the chest where I'd hit it. That was when Aevira unleashed everything. She activated a circuit I hadn't seen before, embedded deep in her palm. She planted her hand on the earth, and the forest responded. Roots tore up from the ground. Branches twisted and lashed out. Vines slithered like serpents, wrapping around the attackers. Nature itself became her weapon, and when the last of them fell, silence returned. She dropped to her knees, bleeding silver, gasping, but alive. I ran to her, pulled her into my arms. "You did it," I whispered. She looked at me, tears finally falling, warm, real, human. "No," she said. "We did." We retrieved Mirell together. The baby slept through it all, born in the middle of a war, cradled by 2 warriors who had no idea what they were doing, but every intention of doing it right. We burned the bodies, not out of hatred, but because we knew their tech would corrupt if left exposed. Their fragments were coded with recall sequences. They couldn't be allowed to trace us again. When the ashes cooled, Aevira stood over them and whispered the names of the 12 failed embryo cores she once carried inside her, one by one. "They mattered," she said, "even if no one else thought they did." I held Mirell close, and for the first time, she smiled in her sleep. A miracle. A beginning. That night, Aevira and I lay in silence, watching the stars return. The grid was gone. The danger, for now, had passed. "Do you think they'll try again?" I asked. "They'll hesitate," she said, "because now they know I'm not alone." I turned to her, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Do you regret it?" I asked. She blinked slowly. "I was engineered to be a vessel. I became a weapon. But because of you, I became something they never prepared me for." "What?" She smiled. "A mother." I once believed the world ended at the edge of my cabin porch. Beyond the trees was war, noise, collapse, systems that stripped people bare and then blamed them for being empty. But now the world began in a cradle made of stone and starlight. It began with a child wrapped in torn exofabric, sucking her thumb like any earthborn baby. It began with a woman who had never been allowed to want anything, finally daring to dream, and I was part of that beginning. Weeks passed. The seasons shifted gently. Winter whispering through the trees, not yet biting, but warning. I built stronger walls. Aevira upgraded them again, embedding crystalline nodes into the corners of the house that subtly changed the air. I didn't ask how they worked. I only knew that after she activated them, the wind outside never reached a temperature low enough to harm Mirell. Our child. Ours. Every day she grew, impossibly fast. Her eyes were mirrors of both of us, soft like mine, sharp like Aevira's. She babbled in tones neither of us understood, sometimes clicking, sometimes almost singing, frequencies we couldn't hear but felt in our bones. Sometimes the trees outside bent ever so slightly when she cooed. Birds gathered on the windowsill. Seeds sprouted in the soil around her without being planted. "She's not just alive," Aevira said one morning as Mirell floated a stone in her palm. "She's awakening." To what? To herself. Aevira began to record everything. Using strands of her internal circuits and fragments from the destroyed recall drone, she wove a device no larger than a stone, which glowed faintly. When she spoke into it, "We must document Mirell," she said, "not as evidence, as memory." "Why?" I asked. "Because when they come again, they'll try to define her. And no one should be allowed to name her future except us." That day, we recorded our first archive. Aevira told her story, her origin, her rejection, her impossible transformation. I spoke of my isolation, my regrets, and the first night I saw the sky tear open and fate fall like fire into my arms. And then we recorded Mirell's first laugh. That sound could break stars. Despite everything, I worried about food, about power, about the next wave of pursuers who wouldn't send agents but weapons, ships, fields, death code. Aevira told me we had time. "How do you know?" I asked. "Because we broke the algorithm," she said. "They thought I could not bear life. They calculated the odds of survival. They even predicted my potential resistance window. And I exceeded every variable. We've entered the chaos zone. And that's good?" She smiled. "It means they're afraid, because chaos is something they can't program." One morning, I found Aevira and Mirell outside, barefoot in the frost. They were building something in the soil again, a second cradle, shaped differently. "This one is for Earth," Aevira said. "I thought the first was," I replied. "No," she said, brushing dirt from Mirell's hand. "The first was for her to arrive. This one is for her to grow." Over the next few days, we planted roots that didn't look like any plant I'd seen, metallic tendrils laced with pulses of blue light. Mirell touched them each morning, humming her tiny songs. The roots spread beneath the soil. The trees grew stronger, thicker. "This forest is hers now," Aevira whispered. "She's sinking with the land." "You mean she's connected?" "She's becoming the link between technology and life, between rejection and rebirth, between what Aevira was made to be and what Mirell was born to become." And then came the message, not from the sky. From underground, a device buried deep in the mountains east of us, one I didn't even know existed, activated with a soft chime. Aevira stared at it for a long time before speaking. "It's a beacon. From them?" "No," she said. "From the ones like me. The others who survived." My breath caught. "There are more?" "I didn't know, but now they're reaching out." I felt cold. "What do they want?" "I think they want to belong. Like I did." She turned to me, eyes wide and fearful. "Willy, we may not be alone anymore." It started with the sky shifting shades, clouds twisting in unnatural spirals. Then came the signals, short bursts of encrypted tones. Aevira translated them quickly. "They're not hostile. They're asking if they can come." I nodded slowly. "We built a home," I said. "Maybe it's time to share it." "Are you sure?" she asked. No, I admitted. But I wasn't sure when you arrived either. The first to arrive was a being named Threxen. Neither male nor female, towering and plated in organic crystal, Threxen had no voice, but spoke through resonance. When they met Mirell, they pulsed a low hum that made her laugh so hard she hiccuped. Next came Vimari, sleek and feline, wrapped in nanoweave robes, whose first words were, "So this is the child the void feared," and then others, 7, then 12, then more. Each different, each broken once by design and now rebuilding through choice. We didn't start a rebellion. We started a refuge. Aevira called them the Reckon. Not rebels. Not survivors, remnants becoming kin. They brought knowledge, tools, stories. We shared our soil, our seeds, our silence. And the child who had once been impossible became the heart of a growing world. Mirell spoke her first real word one evening, under the stars. We were gathered around a fire. Aevira was telling a story of her creators, how they numbered everything and named nothing. Mirell, sitting between us, pointed to the sky and said, "Free." One word, but it echoed through us all. We sat still for a long time afterward. Even Threxen's crystal plates shimmered like tears, and I held Aevira's hand, the one they'd said was too large, too cold, too wrong to hold life. And yet, there we were, alive, together. Mirell changed the seasons. That's not a metaphor. I watched it happen. One evening in mid-autumn, with frost threatening to kill the last of our greenhouse crops, she toddled barefoot into the soil bed, placed her palms flat into the dirt, and whispered, not in words, but in something deeper, more instinctual. And the frost retreated. The soil warmed, and new shoots pushed their way out of the ground, blooming under a moonless sky. Aevira and I exchanged a look. She didn't say it aloud, but I knew we were both thinking it. Mirell wasn't just a miracle. She was a force of nature. She was 3 months old, biologically closer to 3 years, thanks to her hybrid DNA and the unknown variable we'd yet to define. Maybe it was the Earth. Maybe it was Aevira. Maybe it was me. But Mirell was accelerating, not just in growth, in perception. She spoke in complete sentences now, short, cryptic ones that made the Reckon pause and stare. "Do shadows breathe?" she asked Vimari once. "Yes," Vimari replied, "but not when you look at them." Another time, she looked at Threxen's core crystal and said, "Your heart has a crack that leaks stars." We didn't understand, but we recorded everything. Aevira built an archive dome from a crashed piece of sky metal Threxen had gifted her. Inside, she wove data filaments, voice capture nodes, and memory threads. Mirell's every word became scripture, not to worship, to remember, because she was already becoming something larger than story. She was becoming myth. The Reckon began to change around her. Threxen no longer pulsed just to communicate. Their resonance began matching Mirell's humming patterns, synchronizing, like echo chambers adapting to a deeper truth. Vimari, who once only moved in silence, began painting images of a world that hadn't yet come. Structures and floating ecosystems, family units of blended code and biology, time measured not by clocks, but by emotional gravity. Aevira, too, was shifting. She no longer flinched in her sleep. She sang often. She even laughed fully, one night when Mirell clumsily stacked stones into what she called a cloud baby throne. I had never heard that sound from her before. It was hope, out loud. And then came the first vision. Mirell woke screaming, not in fear, but in warning. "The web is breaking," she cried. "The threads are wrong." She pointed to the sky, clear and still. Then a single thread of light snapped across the horizon. The stars above us trembled, visibly shifted. Aevira rose immediately. She'd seen that before. "Something's collapsing," she whispered. "What do you mean?" I asked. "In orbit, not near, not Earth, but close enough to ripple through the net." The net was what Aevira called the fabric of anchored space, the equilibrium that kept planetary gravitational corridors stable. If something powerful was tearing through it, the consequences could echo here. "We need to prepare," she said. "For what?" "For someone new, or something worse." 3 nights later, the stranger arrived, not by ship, by silence. We found him at the edge of the forest, barefoot, translucent, eyes like data vaults. He spoke in a tone that made my bones ache. "I came for her," he said. Aevira stepped in front of Mirell, hands glowing. "She is not yours." "I do not want to take her," he said calmly. "I want to understand her. Before the others." "Come." "What others?" I asked. "The ones who built her potential." The forest felt colder then. Aevira's voice dropped. "There were no others. She's mine." The stranger tilted his head. "You did not build what lives inside her. You were the vessel. He looked at me. Was the spark. But what grew was beyond either of you." He turned to Mirell, who stood calm, curious. "You bent the thread line," he said softly. "Why?" Mirell shrugged. "It was tangled. I wanted it straight." The stranger's mouth quivered. Not a smile. Not fear. Something reverent. "She will bring convergence," he said. "And divergence. You must choose which." Then he vanished. Aevira collapsed. She awoke trembling. "It's beginning," she said. "What is?" "The convergence. Mirell is waking up too fast. Her mind's outpacing her body. If she collapses inward before she balances, she'll die?" "No," Aevira said grimly. "She'll unmake herself." We moved quickly. The Recon built a cocoon dome out of gravity-stable bark and quantum filaments. We called it the Still Nest. Inside it, Mirell could sleep while her mind stabilized. Think of it like a neural incubator, but made from story, song, and root. Aevira and I stayed outside the dome while she slept for 6 straight days. "She's not dreaming," Aevira said. "She's calculating." "Calculating what?" "Probability. Threads. She's running futures. Deciding which one hurts least." I wanted to cry then. She's just a child. "She never got to be just anything," Aevira whispered. "Not with this power." On the 7th day, Mirell emerged, eyes glowing, hair floating slightly in the air, skin luminous like starlight underwater. "I fixed it," she said. "What?" I asked. "The knot, in the web, the one that was coming to hurt us. And above us, unseen by any tech we had, the universe realigned. No quakes, no fires, just balance, restored. But not everyone saw that balance as salvation. The human world. Yes, that old machine had caught wind of strange signals, gravitational anomalies, unexplained atmospheric warmth in our region. They were coming, not the ones who made Aevira, not the Recon, humans, governments, scientists, colonizers of anything unknown. We prepared again, but this time not to fight, to show, to stand, to define ourselves, before they tried to write us down wrong. Aevira stood on the ridge with a beacon of her own, a message, translated into over 4,000 languages, including ones lost before Earth even had ink. It said, "She is not yours to study. She is ours to love." When the helicopters came, we didn't run. When the drones came, we stood still. And when the first man in black stepped forward, holding out a scanner, Mirell simply looked at him and said, "No." And his device turned to dust. He fell to his knees, not in pain, in awe. "I saw her," he whispered. "I saw everything." He never spoke again. Governments backed off slowly. They left sensors at the borders. They dropped equipment from high altitude, but no one stepped past the outer field, because Mirell's cradle now projected something even stronger than fear. Reverence. And in that reverence, we found something else. Peace. The Reckon built homes in the trees, in the caves, underwater in glimmering, coral hives. Mirell visited each, leaving gifts no one understood, whispering truths that made even the most ancient beings weep. And one day, she looked up at me and said, "Do you miss before?" "Before what?" "Before me." I knelt down, pulled her close. "I didn't live before you," I said. "I was just waiting." She smiled, her hand glowed, and where it touched my chest I felt time rewind, just for a moment, back to the night I found Aevira in the crater, and I realized that night wasn't an accident. It was a beginning, one Mirell had seen, maybe even chosen, before she was born. Mirell was no longer a child in the way the world understood children. Her body remained small, 6, maybe 7 years old in appearance, but her eyes held galaxies of knowing. Her breath slowed the wind. Her laughter stirred rivers. She was becoming something else, not a god, not a weapon. Something wiser. Aevira noticed it first. "She doesn't sleep anymore," she whispered one night as we lay beneath a sky Mirell had reshaped to mirror her favorite constellation, a spiral we couldn't trace to any known galaxy. "She meditates, she dissolves, and then she returns." We'd grown used to the surreal, but even now, we were stunned by what she could do, and by what she chose not to, because power wasn't what defined her, it was restraint. The world had changed, not in sudden explosions, but in quiet revelations. Earth's pulse stabilized. Crops flourished in places once barren. Species long thought extinct began to return. And at the heart of it all, hidden from cameras, protected by a family that had once been broken pieces of old systems, was a girl who hummed to the soil and whispered to gravity. The Reckon called her the Pivot, but to us, she was still Mirell, our daughter. The final breach came on the eve of her 8th birthday, if you could call it that. We didn't measure her age in candles or cake. We measured it in revolutions around understanding. She had reached a moment where her being extended beyond form. That night, the stars blinked again. A triangle of light opened in the sky. No sound, no warning, just absence folding into presence. Voice boomed, though no one spoke. "The prototype has breached protocol." Mirell turned to the sky. "I am not a prototype," she said. "You are an anomaly, a convergence of code and chaos. You must be corrected." Aevira stepped forward, arms wide. "She is not yours. Correction is not punishment. Correction is containment." That's when the sky began to collapse. Not physically. Not like an asteroid or a weapon. Time itself bent. Trees flickered. Gravity rippled like a wave of breath. They were trying to reset reality, erase the deviation that Mirell represented, but Mirell did not flinch. She stepped into the air, walked upward like there were stairs no one else could see. "I won't fight you," she said to the void, "but I will protect what matters. You cannot undo your origin." "I don't have to," she replied. "I just have to choose my future." And with that, she reached out and touched the ripple in the sky. The triangle of light shook, trembled, as if questioning its own authority. And then it shattered. Silently, the sky restored. The collapse reversed. Reality stabilized. And Mirell descended glowing, changed, whole. She collapsed into Aevira's arms. "Is she all right?" I asked, rushing forward. Aevira smiled, tears on her cheeks. "She's more than all right." Mirell opened her eyes. "I found the core," she said softly. "What core?" "The code inside me. The original imprint. I saw what they wrote, and I rewrote it." You rewrote your origin? She nodded. It doesn't own me anymore. And just like that, the last chain broke. She wasn't a machine with upgrades. She wasn't a being with power. She was a soul. Life resumed in ways no one expected. We didn't go back to normal. There was no normal to return to. Instead, a new age unfolded, one not led by governments or corporations, but by communities inspired by the Rican, drawn to the forests where Mirell had changed the sky. People came not to conquer, but to learn, to unlearn, and to build something gentler. Aevira became a guide, not a leader, but a bridge between what was created and what was born. I became a storyteller. I told our story in small circles. In caves lit by bioluminescence, in fields warmed by Mirell's presence. I told it not to convince, but to remember, because remembering was rebellion. Years passed, though not in ways we understood before. Mirell aged, but not linearly. She grew tall, then small again, then vast like a being made of sunlight before returning to her favorite shape. The girl who danced barefoot on frozen soil. She said that time was just a flavor, and she liked this one best. On the eve of her transformation, her final one, she came to me while I sat watching the stars that no longer behaved. Dad, she said. I never got used to that word on her tongue. Yes, little spiral, I have to go soon. My chest tightened. Where? Beyond. Outside the code, past the structure they made to contain wonder. Why? Because they're building it again, on another world. They're about to make someone else the way they made Mom. And this time, I'll be there before they break her. Tears burned my eyes. So this is goodbye? She shook her head. No, it's hello, for someone else. And it's always love. I hugged her, tighter than I should have. She didn't crack. She only glowed. Aevira stood beside me, hand on my back, tears streaming, but smiling. She's doing what I never could, she said. What's that? Freeing others before they're caged. At dawn, Mirell stepped into the field where her cradle once stood. The forest bowed. The sky parted, not like a wound, but like an opening door. And she walked into it. No flash. No thunder. No farewell. Just light and silence. And then, the soft bloom of a flower where her foot had been. A flower that glowed in both day and night. A flower that hummed when the wind passed. We named it the Mirell bloom, and it never died. Aevira, and I remained. Not forever. Just long enough. Long enough to raise the next child who wandered lost into our forest. Long enough to make sure the story didn't fade. Long enough to turn grief into seed, and pain into story, and story into the kind of truth that could never be coded again. We were broken things once. We became a family, and that family rewrote the universe.